The Soviet thermal physicist and doctor of sciences Viktor Weinik recounted how his works, dedicated to the mysteries of fine worlds, were destroyed. These events marked the beginning of a difficult journey that transformed his views on life and death. Once, the scientist rejected the idea of a creator and considered attempts to link science with spirituality meaningless. However, an event in the hospital forced him to see everything differently. His theory about the existence of fine worlds and their connection to consciousness not only shocked his colleagues but also deeply affected him. "Is it true that your books about fine worlds were burned?" Weinik was asked during a seminar at the Ivanova Medical University in the year 1977. "Yes, that is correct," he replied. On the 19th of September, 1969, the chairman of the Council of Ministers of the BSSR issued an order to remove my books, including thermodynamics, from libraries and destroy them by burning. One of my colleagues said at the time that I should be glad it was the books that were burned and not the authors. To this, I reminded him of the words of Giordano Bruno: "Burning does not mean refuting." The seminar gathered everyone who wanted to hear Weinik's theory firsthand. Initially, the scientist was a staunch materialist and rejected ideas about a creator. But over the years, his views changed, and he concluded that his theory in no way contradicted religious concepts. "I hope you will not be disappointed that I remain faithful to materialistic science," he said to the audience at the beginning of his lecture. Thus began one of Viktor Weinik's most fascinating lectures, leaving its mark both in the realm of science and in the modern spiritual search movements. Viktor Weinik claimed that, according to his theory, the universe is divided into numerous levels. Our world, which he called the macro world, represents a chronometric reality of time and space. Within the depths of the macro world lie microworlds made up of electrons, atoms, and molecules, and even deeper, there are the pico-world, femto-world, and atto-world. These fine worlds, Weinik suggested, contain extra-chromosomal and extratemporal spatial phenomena. Fine worlds exist outside of time and space, making them difficult for our perception to grasp. It is extremely challenging to imagine objects existing simultaneously in three different times or phenomena that are ubiquitous in our world. Nevertheless, Weinik emphasized that such objects are present at almost every point in our world and interact with it. Looking over his glasses, the scientist explained that all worlds are nested within each other and interact with one another. To support his claims, he provided examples. Our consciousness does not operate according to the laws of time and space, but rather follows the principles of fine worlds, where these laws no longer apply. For this reason, consciousness can exhibit phenomena such as telepathy, influence over physical objects, movement of items, and even remote diagnosis. The scientist believed that such abilities are fundamentally accessible to every human being. Another phenomenon of fine worlds, according to Weinik, is the poltergeist. It can take various forms: noises, movement or falling of objects, and other inexplicable occurrences. Poltergeists most often interact with those attempting to establish a connection with the fine world. Weinik also claimed that phenomena associated with unidentified flying objects confirm his theory. These objects, he explained, utilize chronal phenomena of the fine world. Furthermore, they leave behind chronal fields at the locations they occupy, which can negatively affect human health, causing illnesses or even death. "I have personally witnessed such phenomena repeatedly," Weinik added. In his opinion, such objects could be creations of extraterrestrial civilizations that exist at a higher level of development. They utilize chronal phenomena, levitation engines, and other technologies unknown to modern scientific understanding. However, among the anomalous phenomena, there are also those that could cause concern. The suspected extraterrestrial origin of these phenomena could be nothing more than a disguise, a seductive deception. Perhaps their true goal is to entice humanity by luring it with the pursuit of scientific and technological progress. "This old man opened my eyes to the truth," Viktor Weinik recalled. In 1977, when the scientist shared his theory, someone in the audience asked, "Does your theory allow for a place for the Creator, who created everything?" Weinik answered negatively at that time, assuring that the fine worlds had always existed and had no creator. However, 15 years later, in 1992, the scientist had to reconsider his views. Due to health problems, he was in the hospital for examination. In the same room lay an old priest suffering from lung cancer. Despite his illness, he radiated kindness and goodwill. This old man patiently listened to my wise speeches, Weinik recounted. Sometimes he told stories from his life about God, about the battle between the forces of darkness and light for our souls. And it all seemed so familiar to me. Suddenly, the thought occurred to me, these are my objects from the fine world. Shortly before, Weinik had completed a series of experiments where he investigated the charge of these objects. The charge could be either positive or negative. Then, the scientist began to read the Bible, and he was astonished. The descriptions in it matched what he had observed. And the old man still tried to convince me to be baptized in the church, repent, and the illness would disappear, Weinik remembered. When his examination was completed, the doctors suspected the worst. Weinik decided to follow the priest's advice. When he entered the church for the first time, he became dizzy, lost consciousness, fell, and struck his head severely. Afterward, he had to call for an ambulance. He never visited the church again without accompaniment. And although it's hard to believe, my illness gradually began to recede. The usual weakness disappeared. I felt strength again, said the scientist. In the same year, when he was 73 years old, Viktor Weinik was baptized. This old man opened my eyes to the truth, the scientist claimed. He continued his in-depth study of the sacred scriptures. The more he delved into the study, the more he found similarities between the foundations of his theory and what was said in these books. I had a suspicion. Am I perhaps receiving all my theories from above? Weinik thought. Or is this the reason why all the forces of orthodox science have turned against me? The scientist claimed that, both theoretically and experimentally, the existence of fine, pico, and ultrafine, femto, worlds had been proven. Objects of the first type are referred to in the biblical texts as souls, and the second type as spirits. The Bible also speaks of two kinds of spirits, the spirits of the good and the spirits of the evil, which differ in their nature and their effect on humans. Viktor Weinik was shaken by what he read. For only recently, through his research, he had confirmed the existence of spirits of the good and the evil. A variety of observations, experiments, and measurements of indirect signs confirmed both their existence and the differences in their behavior. The radiation of the spirits of the good, the traces of their presence and interaction, create a positive chronal field, claimed the scientist. Everything associated with the spirits of the evil radiates a negative field. According to Weinik, consecrated objects, icons, and churches create a positive field, while phenomena like poltergeists and unidentified flying objects emit a negative field. Furthermore, under certain conditions, a person can communicate directly, not just indirectly, with spirits. This, according to Weinik, also confirms the existence of the fine world. He believed that saints could communicate with the spirits of the good, while clairvoyants connect with the spirits of the evil. This was the conclusion Viktor Weinik reached several years before his tragic death. Imagine a world where there is no aging, where familiar faces appear to you in a new, youthful appearance, the scientist said. In his research, Weinik often referred to examples of well-known mediums, such as Arthur Fort, a man who, according to witnesses, was able to see what was hidden from most people. During his travels to the other world, he learned something that forever changed his perception of life and death. What did Arthur Fort see on the other side? Why does no one age there? And how is this connected to our being? Weinik wondered. In one of his speeches, Arthur Fort said, "For every person born in this world, there comes a moment when they must die. But before that happens, we all go through the aging process. I clearly recognize that this phase of my life is nearing its logical end. Of course, I don't want to become a helpless old man and be a burden to anyone. But am I ready to die? To this, I can answer, I have already died once. And this experience brought me the most impressive and moving experiences of my life. Arthur Fort, who had the ability to communicate with the inhabitants of the afterlife, mentioned an incident that occurred during a dangerous illness, when he left his body and was able to see what life after death looks like. After what happened, I can't find any reason why death should be worse than earthly trials, he admitted. Now I know that changes await us, where we all will go. And above all, they concern the external appearance of the deceased and their condition. Arthur Fort had claimed for many years that in this world, no one ages and that the external appearance of each person reflects their true essence. Arthur Fort, who suffered from heart problems caused, in his own words, by an irresponsible lifestyle and harmful habits, experienced clinical death. Doctors predicted that he would not survive the night, but that day, his condition changed, and he managed to return to life. Once conscious again, Fort recounted that he had been on the other side. This experience forever changed his views on life after death, and thanks to his phenomenal abilities, he moved his beliefs from the realm of faith to that of knowledge. So close to death, I was not afraid, he reported. Instead, I was filled with curiosity. What would happen next? He noticed that his consciousness was hovering in the air directly above his body. It was amazing. I felt no fatigue or pain anymore, Fort recalled. He then described his journey through the void. I was in a space without time. I effortlessly flew through this emptiness. I did not feel my body, but I was aware that I was still myself. Soon, he was surrounded by mountains, and he saw people approaching from all sides. I knew them all, Fort said. They were deceased people I had known at different stages of my life. Some I hadn't thought of in years, but each of them was connected to a specific part of my past. Arthur Fort explained that he did not recognize the arrivals by their appearance, but through an inner feeling, as their appearance had changed. Those who had died at an old age appeared young, and those who had died as children were now adults. After meeting the deceased, Fort was forced to return to life. Later, he tried to explain that in the afterlife, the physical body is replaced by what he called the beta body, which is our true personality. Our consciousness is already in this beta body, in which it will continue to exist after death, he claimed. Fort emphasized that many people could not believe in the reality of the beta body because they mistakenly believe we only have 5 senses. We have many more. In earthly life, we only see a person's physical body, but the personality remains invisible. We do not get to know each other through the 5 primary senses, but through finer abilities that our beta body possesses, concluded the clairvoyant. Arthur Fort, who passed away in January 1971 at the age of 73, reappeared in the spring of 1985 when he communicated with people possessing the gift of clairvoyance. In this posthumous conversation, he answered questions about the afterlife, including the key question, what is life after death like? The answer to this question depends on who you ask. You are asking me, so I will tell you about my own experience, he said. After his transition, free from his physical body, Arthur Fort met his deceased parents and found himself in a hall where the events of his earthly life were recalled to him. I had the ability to communicate with the deceased, but by the end of my earthly life, I began to fear this gift and grew weary of it, Fort shared. When the memories ended, he found himself by a forest lake, where he was informed that he could now rest and get accustomed to his new body, which appeared significantly younger. I was told that there is no aging here. I chose the age of 45, and that became my permanent appearance, the clairvoyant recounted. Fort mentioned that there is no time in the spiritual world. He also quoted researchers like Edward Reddell, who claimed, most earthly scientists have almost no idea how the visible and invisible worlds work. I didn't know that myself until I was here. According to Fort, in the spiritual world, anyone can look however they wish, and this also applied to his own example. All signs of aging disappeared, and my appearance became a reflection of my essence. Arthur Fort explained that in the spiritual world, the physical body is replaced by one that lacks cellular structure. There are no cells here, so there is no aging, he emphasized. In his book, The Heavenly Wisdom on Divine Providence, Fort wrote, "I communicated with souls that lived many centuries ago, before and after the flood. They all looked like middle-aged people. They didn't know what death was. When a person enters the spiritual world, they return to the peak of their youth and remain in that state forever." He also mentioned that in the spiritual world, people take on an appearance that reflects their true personality. Here, we meet our relatives, who help us be reborn into the new world. Although their appearance changes, they remain recognizable to us. For example, the grandmother who greets her grandson no longer looks old and emaciated, as she did in the last years of her earthly life. "Her appearance reflects her soul," said Arthur Fort.